every now and then at these fintech conferences, you get a real star, a growing brand that is setting records and spending a small fortune on marketing. Company, a fintech that needs no introduction. White label crowdfunding is not yet one of them. So I'm going to give you a minute's introduction into my background and to white label crowdfunding and talk a bit about kind of setting up in the sector and how to do it. I've really come from the web industry. I've worked in the online translation of e-commerce sites, of e-gaming sites. I set up web translations in 2002 after leaving university. And it was really for lack of access to capital that got me into the fintech world after seeing how the success of some of the US crowdfunding platforms, Indiegogo and Kickstarter, and of course Zopa in the UK, that really got me interested in the kind of peer-to-peer lending space. And I would clarify that white label crowdfunding does a lot more in the peer-to-peer lending side of things rather than the equity crowdfunding side of things, which is what Investry and Investors does really well. And I'm looking forward to the collaboration and the partnership that's really unfolded as a result of this conference bringing us together. We work with a sister company called Rebuilding Society, which has been running for 6 years now. It's FCA authorized and it has been lending to SMEs, over 250 companies now, with a loan book of over 13 million. It's ticking along quite well and quite nicely. And yes, as Julia mentioned, I'm one of the co-founders of Fintech North. So it's a real privilege to be here today, to be able to participate in Liverpool, a new city. It's great to kind of expand the audience and move out into other cities. And it was pretty impressive staying at the Titanic Hotel. It's really nice being in Liverpool, but it's a beautiful place, isn't it? It's also a little bit sombering in a way because you get to see what was the behemoth of the maritime industry and how magnificent it really was, and how decimated that has become. And on the way here, as I was reading a bit about it, I was interested in understanding the competitive pressures that led to the demise of that sector and the decline of the British Empire that kind of eroded a little bit of the shine that Liverpool had back in the heyday. And it was when Henry Murison mentioned a couple of points on the changes that are afoot in the financial sector, it kind of made a few connections to me, because actually there's some quite alarming things happening in traditional finance. So actually, since 2015, over 2,000 branches have closed. And there is a significant transition of traditional finance sectors that really do need to evolve and become more fintech-oriented and focus on some of the newer industries, which kind of leads to the huge demand in collaborating with fintech providers, as we've heard much about today. We do attract some of the financial sector in Leeds, where we have more of an established presence. And that was achieved somewhat in Manchester as well. I really hope that we can do the same in Liverpool and other parts of the country as we grow, because I think it's a really important message that needs to be delivered. White label crowdfunding can really help with that transition into operating a fintech platform. It cooperates with traditional financial businesses, but also with entrepreneurs who are looking to become the financier of their sector. And actually, the barriers to entry to be able to do that have really reduced in recent years. So you can now get the regulatory permissions. You can become an appointed representative of an existing firm that's authorized, like Rebuilding Society, and operate under their umbrella. You can license the technology from a provider like white label crowdfunding and actually get set up. So you can achieve two major challenges with just a couple of providers. And it struck home for me when actually we were approached by somebody who's run a telemarketing company. So our latest prospect, and we're in final stages of negotiating the commercials, actually runs a telemarketing center. I wouldn't have thought, historically I've always wanted to work with people that either had a tech or a finance background, but this person has a telemarketing, and he was asked to do a campaign promoting and advertising and marketing ISAs. Okay, and he comes to me and he says, look, Dan, people have been having a raw deal of ISAs, and this campaign has ran tremendously successfully. I want to get into providing ISAs for running up my own platform. And so he's come to us, and yes, we're able to help him. We're able to help shape that business plan. And it really epitomizes the point that now anyone with some marketing, and to some extent it helps to have credit risk analysis and underwriting skills brought into that business, but anyone with those skills can really get into the crowdfunding and the peer-to-peer lending sector. So I'm hoping to pique your interest. If you're working in the traditional financial sector, then absolutely it's worth keeping your eyes open as to how you might want to make a transition into the fintech scene. There are a few ways on how to broach entering into peer-to-peer lending. For those of you who are gripped and not on the edge of your seats right now, partnering is certainly the quickest way, working in conjunction with an existing established platform. So, some of the cons involved with that are that you have to work with their credit decisioning process, you have to work with their existing established policies and procedures, their financial product, and of course their brand. But some of them will offer an introducer. A lot of them are familiar with working with commercial finance brokers and introducers, and so can offer a branded version of their platform. Okay, where it's just a different window to the same technology, the same underlying product. And this is actually quite common in the financial services sector, reskinning and rebranding somebody else's service. And then there's a further 3 steps of depth, essentially, that you can go to as either your business expands or as your strategy unfolds and you decide to make more of a commitment into the sector. So becoming an appointed rep and licensing somebody else's technology is a really good catalyst. A lot of pros in this. So you run your own brand, you can create your own products, the revenue streams come into yourselves. There are fees involved in getting that set up and in working quite closely with your network principal. You can build your own platform and apply directly to the FCA, but that comes with hiring a compliance director. It comes with making a completely fresh application, and it actually took us 27 months to get our FCA authorization through. So it's not for the faint-hearted, and probably if you're just used to running a telemarketing company, something that you might struggle with. Certainly, partnering up is easier if you have less exposure to regulated financial services. And of course, buying an existing peer-to-peer business. And in fact, there are quite a few out there that throughout their history have attempted to launch and focus on a particular niche, but haven't quite achieved the growth aspirations they were perhaps looking for, and would be good acquisition targets. And we happen to know a few of them that have maybe gone at it alone, approached us, but for whatever reason we haven't done a deal, and now they're maybe struggling a little bit, looking to sell what they have developed, their IP. So I am quite well connected in this sector and can really help anyone or any institution that is serious about looking to set up and to cooperate in it. And actually it is a rapidly growing sector, and there are some tremendous opportunities, and it's not very often I'll put great things to get excited about pan-European regulation on the same slide, but the Capital Markets Union and it's the introduction of the crowdfunding regulatory framework across Europe is one of the first examples of standardized banking regulation that will be pan-European. I learnt about this for the first time actually from Oliver Geider, who spoke in Leeds, who runs the European Crowdfunding Network. He was presenting how he consults with the European Commission around the drafting, in fact, of this directive that looks like it will come into effect later this year. And it presents a humongous opportunity because the regulatory barrier has actually been one of the most significant impediments to international trade, and to be able to operate with one of the major benefits of being online, which is that you don't really have the same geographic barriers. Okay, the language barrier still exists, but trading online is something that I've been used to doing with web translations and helping these e-commerce companies to be able to trade internationally. So the opening up of these European markets is not just a tremendous opportunity for UK domestic and even those established international financial service organizations that want to get their online presence established, but it's also a huge threat because well, as with the globalization and much of the international competition and labour kind of workforce that was a detriment to much of our maritime industry, well, we could well and truly see the same thing happen to our financial services sector. So this is a real double-edged sword that we hope we can use to our advantage by inspiring and motivating people at events like this. So please tell everybody about it, how important it is that we make use of this legislation and that we operate on the continent. Also, the adoption of ISA investments. Everybody has been getting a bad deal, and it is only until you get into ISAs that are delivering on higher yields and that people really understand some of the alternative products that are out there that are new, like the Innovative Finance ISA, and how they compare and contrast and vary differently to cash ISAs, which have had low yields for several years now, and stocks and shares which have been volatile. So please do come and approach me. Thanks very much, Julian. That's it. Cool. Thank you.